Basically, I thought I'd go through what I'm doing at the moment with Davinci Resolve and color correcting the footage. The version of Davinci Resolve I'm using is the free version. You can download it from the Blackmagic site, I believe, or just to search for it and download it. And there is also the tutorial sites and links to video tutorials where this is where I've learned, pretty much all I'm showing you, aside from what I've just sort of been exploring by playing with the software a little bit. So, but the tutorial is very excellent. I've only really done maybe half an hour of a tutorial, but that was enough to get me the basics and get me going with the color correction. Also based on what I know from doing photography courses and that sort of stuff. So let's share the Davinci Resolve screen. So we'll open a project, or the project's already open actually. So we've already got an open project here. And you can see if we go in, here is the clips menu. So you go into the clips menu, you can see the different file types. These are the actual raw clips, and these are the timelines that I've created. So you can differentiate between one and the other, because the raw files have this little musical icon, so those are the shots, and the timelines have this little timeline icon here, and these are the ones I've created. So you create them by right clicking on it, and then you go up to create a new timeline using selected clip, and then I'm matching the file type name with the shot. So when it comes to matching it up in the timeline for my editing software, I'm matching up the exact file name. So that'd be basically it. Go to custom settings, you can see things like the format, frames per second, whether you want to scale the entire image to fit, but in this case this is all we need. So use basic settings. I can't create this because I've already created one with timeline with the same file name, but that's what I do, is I push create at this point, push it while it's existing, and it will come up with a error message like this: failed to create a timeline name must be unique. So that's okay, so we don't need to recreate it. But I can go into it at the moment and you can see what I've done to it. So this is the editing timeline. We go into these lower icons. These are our submenus. So this is our media submenu, and this is our color submenu, and that's the one we want to select right now. So go into color submenu. You can see here, this is actually, we'll go to the first shot, exterior shot. This is our exterior shot. Once it refreshes. This shot that I took in Cannes when I was there, and if I click this little full screen, you can see the nodes that I've created. So let me just minimize this for a second. So these are the nodes. This is the secondary node, this is the primary node. I can delete that now. So starting from scratch, this is what you'd get, but I've already made some changes here. So if we should be able to reset it. Reset node grade. There we go. So here's the raw footage as it is, and the first node. So I'll blow that up now, and I'm looking at the histogram, or the waveform chart. Sorry. So here you can change the different ways in which you can see these levels. And I've got waveform selected because that's the one I find easiest. You can use parade, and you can see the three separate color types: red, green, and blue. RGB. You can see waveform, which is what I like. You can see vector scope. You can use histograms, and you can use CIE chromaticity. But what I'm familiar with is a waveform, so we're going to go to that. And here, this number here, 896, that's kind of, anything above that is gain, which we don't want. Like, it's blowing up the gain. So if we get here a little bit later into the timeline, we're on a brighter part of the shot. Let's see if we can find it. Yes, where the sun's hitting the buildings. You can see all these different artifacts above the gain. That's what we want to remove. So but at the same time I'm desaturating everything that I do, because I don't want a lot of this color. It's like bleed through color, and it's just raw. So initially I'd go into the gain menu here and then just reduce the gain until the waveform is below 896, and you can see the red here. You can see you've also lost a lot of the detail, and it's looking kind of muted, and it's actually looking oversaturated. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just take the saturation down to, I'm going to say 35, so that's desaturated it, and then I'm going to go across to my gamma levels, and I'm going to push up my gamma levels. Now you can see here's the top of the waveform there at 896. It's just below the red, it's just below that. I've pushed up the gamma and it looks a lot brighter, but I've also lost a lot of the blacks in the process. So then I go to my lift, and in this first slot I reduce the lift until, but no less than 0, until I get my blacks left. And it's still looking kind of muted. It's still not quite right, so I'm also going to blow up the contrast a little bit. So I've blown up the contrast a bit. So I know that this image is not gainy at all. And if I can move around it, it looks alright, but it's still not quite there. It's still not quite what I want. Here it's looking quite lovely here, but still, again, it's not quite what I want. So let's move on to a different shot before we get into the second nodes. Let's go to the shot of the clock tower, the bell tower of the church. Again, I'm going to reset this node grade. Okay, it looks pretty good. It's actually not too gainy at the moment. We want to do the same things, reduce the saturation down to about 30%, 35%. I'm seeing there that the blacks aren't going down to 0, so you can see it also looks a bit like that. So I'm going to reduce the lift and drop the blacks down a little bit, and then maybe push the gamma up a little bit. And punch up the contrast a little bit as well. So that's kind of what I want. And then if I click on this little dot here, if I click on the number of the node, you can see the before and after. So you can see this is the before, this is the after. So I'm definitely happy. It's a clearer image with the after. The difference is subtle, but it's definitely there, and this definitely looks more filmic. But it still might not be quite there. So let's go to the next shot. Actually, let's pull up one where we can see somebody's face, because the changes in color correction are most drastic there. So let's go 3, 7, 3. No, I want a close up. There's a close up of the face. I know I've got a close up in here somewhere. These clips. Go for one. Alright, so here we go. Let's just blow this up. So we can see some of her face has been lost in the shadow, but that's okay. She's looking very red because, again, we haven't desaturated it all. On our waveform, we can see that it's not gainy. So that's good, because the gainy adds the sort of extra texture that we don't like. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to push up the gamma. So that's already made a difference. And the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the saturation down to 30. So she's quite desaturated now, but her skin tone looks more natural. She looks a lot less orange than the raw footage. Again, we're going to push the contrast up, so that makes it a little bit crisper. And what else do I do? Oh yes, this is the other thing I'm going to do, because it's quite a big close-up and we can see a lot of her skin texture. I'm going to reduce some of that texture in the second sub-menu. See this MD? That usually is really good if you want to push texture up. So if I push it one way, you can see her lip becomes more, you can see the wrinkles in her lip more, the highlights more, the pores in her skin more. We're going to go the opposite direction. I discovered this from experimentation because I wanted to take some of the raw gaininess out of my shot, and I realized I could do this by using this pattern thing in reverse. So it's like a beauty filter. So see here, we've kind of got a good middle ground here. It still looks natural, but I've reduced some of the pores in her skin. It's actually, if we can reduce it even more, it looks quite dreamlike. So like, you know, full on, it looks fully dreamlike. There's no pores to her skin, but it doesn't look very realistic. So I like to try, you know, just a sort of in between level like that. Okay, so if we just reduce the size of this for a second, and you can see the before and after. So there's quite a big difference in the before and after. You see how orange she looks before I've done my color corrections, and how much nicer and smoother her skin looks after. So that's quite cool. And the other great thing there is I can actually select that and copy that, and any shots like that are similar. So I think 740 might be the same framing. Let's just check 740. So any shots that are similar, I can, yes, I think it is the same framing. So yep, I can take this node, and I've copied, I have taken the previous node. If I go to 741 again, I'll show you these steps. 741, I've already made the corrections. So this is the difference. That's 741, where it looks much nicer, less orange. So I've got the node selected. I go Control C for copy. Then I move through to MVI 740 with the same node selected. Here it is. And then I go Control V for paste, and it pastes across the same settings to that same shot. So that's a real nice way that I can go through all of the shots in a real quick way and make them uniform, make the color correction correct, and they all look the same. So I can go through to 743 now, which might be a similar shot. Let's have a look. At least it will be focused on, hopefully it's focused on the nun. So anything focused on the nun, I'm going to do something similar now, because the lighting will be the same on her. Yep, there we go. It looks again vastly better. Go 745, do the same thing again. Nope, 745 is different, so I'm going to do something different with that. Let's go to a different face, and we've got a different problem here. He's quite underlit, so he already looks kind of desaturated a little bit, but he's way below, like you can see here, he's way below the 800 mark. So we'll go into our gamma and we'll push the gamma up to begin with. So now we can really see his face, and we can push that up quite a bit if you want to, without it getting gainy. So I'm pushing it right up right now. I'm really playing with it right now. Now I'm going to go to the lift. I'm going to drop those blacks right back down, and we can see that it doesn't look very natural. So we'll take the gamma down a bit, or a lot, like that, and raise these blacks. This is because the blacks were below 0. And instead, just go to that first sub menu and push up the contrast. And if we go before and after, and so you can hardly see him before and after. You can see him clearly. He already looks pretty desaturated, so I'm not going to try and desaturate him any more than he already is. I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, so let's have a look what we got here. 0737, 0728. Okay, so it starts off here, she's quite dark, and then it turns to the stained window. She's praying in the darkness almost. So I'm going to copy and paste. So there we've just got our preset, our contrast's up, our saturation is down, we've done the gamma correction, but it's way below here, but I'm not going to change it too much because it pans across to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the gamma here, reduce the gain here where it's brightest and it's blowing out over 800, so we're going to reduce the gain there, and then I can go back, I can drop the blacks down, and I can still push the gamma up without it being gainy. It's already desaturated, so there's a before and after. I think the problem here though is that smoothing thing. So what we can do, we can change that to 0. So it's not doing any smoothing and it's not increasing any of the patterns. I think that looks better. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm fairly happy with that. Okay, probably reduce the gain a little, just a tad. And I can live with that. So there's our before and after. So see, we're going from orange to more natural colours, more muted tones. Now moving right along, what have we got? 729. Okay, again, we don't need the patterning. So if I paste that in there now, and then just take the pattern reduction down to 0. So there is none. Reduce the gain, because this shot is a little bit gainier than the others, probably mainly because of her white clothing being hit by the light, and then maybe push the gamma up a tad more. That's pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Okay, 3, 4. Paste my setting from before. Again, same deals. I don't need the texturing to be done on this one because she's far enough away we're not seeing the pores on her skin. It's a bit gainy, so we can reduce the gain from that waveform and then punch up the lift. Now I might bring the saturation back up a little bit for these shots. Okay, so that's all the first node for all of these shots now. They're all done. First node's done. Now I'll show you how to add a second node for the second part of the process. So we'll go to that first shot that we had. That's almost there but not quite there. And we're going to add a second node by right clicking on it, and we go add node, add serial. So here's our second node. And we make sure that's selected. That's what we're going to be working on now. So first thing we can do is, again, we'll reduce the saturation even a little bit more. So I'm going to go down by 35 to 35 saturation. Pump the contrast up a little bit more, and maybe push the gamma up as well. Just check how it looks as it pans. It's not bad. Look at our before and after. There's our before, there's our after. So it's definitely reduced the colour a lot, taken a lot of that yellow out. Then I can either decide whether I want to live with that sort of more washed out look, or if I want to keep a little bit of that colour in. So I might actually keep that saturation up because it is sunset. So we want a bit of colour in there. So we'll move on to the next shot, which is our church our bell tower. So let's go to the bell tower, add our second node, add serial. Make sure that's selected. What I'm going to do, artistically, is maybe reduce that saturation a little bit more, punch the contrast up a little bit more again, so that we can have a look at it before and after. And I think that looks quite nice. Looks sort of washed out, but punchy and stylistic. So, but I can see that I've raised up the gamma too much, so I'm going to reduce the gain. That's better. Okay, I'm happy with that. Let's go to our next shot. So next shot, I'm starting with the kneeling nun. So we add a second node again, add serial, and same deal as with the second node selected. I'm going to reduce the saturation and punch up the contrast a little bit. I'm not going to play around with the gain or the gamma, because I know as I pan to the shot here, if they were really sitting on the limit, and I think that's probably good enough. So let's go to the next shot. Again, add a second node, add serial. I'm not going to desaturate, it looks pretty desaturated it is. I'm just going to punch the contrast up a little bit more. That's cool. Looking at my gain levels, I'm going to reduce my gain because the waveform is a little bit too high, and I'm going to punch up my gamma again so we can see more of her face. Each point where if I'm pushing up the gamma too much, I'll reduce the gain. So that's looking pretty good now. Yep, I'm liking that. So we can probably copy that setting to this next shot. So go to 0734. If it's a similar framing, yeah, it's a similar framing, same light source. So add a second node, add serial, and I'm just going to paste what I did with that other shot. So yeah, you can see a little bit clearer again, but still underneath the waveform, underneath the 896 mark. So not gaining, not blowing out our screen. Let's go to 0737. Add a node, add serial, and I'm going to punch up the contrast a little bit and leave it at that. That looks pretty good. So let's go to 0740. Add our second node, add serial, and we can see we're well below the gamma. We're well below our limit for the gain, so we're going to punch the gamma up again. So go to our gamma level, punch all the levels of the gamma up. So if I want to reduce the red specifically, I can go to this red channel and start reducing the red. If I want to reduce, if that's too much and it's starting to look too green, I can reduce the green levels. If it's looking too bluish or purplish, I can reduce the blue levels. So I can actually reduce all of these levels like separately or uniformly, depending on how I want to correct it. That's why the software is so good. So that's looking quite nice, but we still haven't punched up the contrast. So punch up the contrast, which also brightens up her saturation. It's a little bit too red according to this waveform, so reduce the red, and if it's looking a little bit too yellow, then reduce the green, and if it's looking too blue, reduce the blue. So or again, just pull them all down a little bit. So I'm pretty happy with the levels for that one. Let's copy that, go to the next shot, which we know is the same framing, add our second node, add serial, and paste that across. So she's looking pretty good now. Let's go to 0743 and add a second node, similar angle, but it's just a bit wider, so we can paste that across again, and again she's looking pretty good there. Let's go 074345. Now this is different. This is just a cutaway shot of her across, and I just want to punch up the levels a little bit. So I'm going to go, staying on the first node, and punch up the gamma quite a bit, and then, but we're not peaking, I don't think. No. And then reduce the blacks. Actually, just punch up the contrast. Punch up the contrast. I'm not going to worry about desaturating it. It's a pretty desaturated image as it is. I'm not going to add a second node. I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go to the final shot. Now, final shot's going to need a little bit of work. It's actually stained glass windows. So go to our first node, and the first thing I'm going to do is punch up the gamma. No, sorry. First thing I'm going to do, same deal. So you can see the waveform. It is blowing out all of the gain. So it's reduced the gain below the 896 mark. Then punch up the gamma. So you can see a little bit more of the detail. We'll punch it up until it's gainy, and then reduce the gain again. And I'm not going to drop down the blacks. I'm just going to punch up the contrast and reduce the saturation down to 35. Then I'm going to add my second node, and I'm going to reduce the gain a little bit, reduce the reds a little bit, and the greens. It's not bad. And punch up the contrast a tad. Oops, blowing up blues now, so reduce the blues as well. So actually we'll uniformly scale down all of the gain like that, and then punch up the gamma a little bit. I'm not going to try and drop the blacks because there's lots of blacks in this shot anyhow, being that it's stained glass windows. So it's essentially backlit, should I say. Alright, so that's looking good. So that's the color correction process. Then the final stage, for me at least, is the delivery. So this is this little rocket icon at the bottom. That's our delivery icon. So click on delivery now, and it looks like I've set up my outputs, which is great. So I actually had this all set up, and then the laptop went flat on me. So I'm going to remove this job, M0734, so I can show you how to add a job. Just clear the render status for it. So all the jobs are there. At the moment it's set to the wrong output, so I'm going to go up to H.264 master and change it from QuickTime format, which I don't use because QuickTime's fairly obsolete, to MP4, 25 frames per second, full HD, just a single clip, and make sure, you know, that's all cool. And then if I was to add this to the render queue, I would add its name, so we go MVI 0748, because I can see its name here in the timeline title, and select the final output location, which in this case is none in the chapel. Select save, and we're ready to go. And then add to render queue, and you can see it's added it here. So now if I just want to render this job out, I can select that separately and start render. Because I've already set up this job, I'm going to take it out of the render queue. Here it is, it's identical version, and I'm going to go and select up into job 5, which would have been before the laptop went flat on me. So it's going to render out this render queue here, and then I go start render, boom. In this case we're replacing the partially written file, so yeah, we can say replace is okay, and it will go to the first frame in our render queue and start to render it out with those changes. So in this case it's our nun praying. So there we go. So that's how I do it. That's my process. So I can see eventually it'll tell me, put maybe after the first rendering, how long it's going to take to do all of these clips. But usually it's around about an hour or so for it to digest all of these different color corrections and render them out for me before I bring it into the timeline. I usually find that as well, that when I do bring it into the timeline, the software itself that I'm working with, Vegas, intuitively it's fairly low contrast. So I punch up the luminescence and contrast a little bit because you can see it's a little bit grayed out. But I know I'm doing that in the software in my final output versus dealing with it being an issue with the raw footage. So either way, it's not going to be gainy. So that's it. I'm going to stop sharing that now while it renders everything, because it's going to take, it says here 2 hours. See here this remaining time. But that's the process. That's what I've been doing over the last week or so with all of my productions at this stage. Obviously different settings for every shot, but I've done hundreds of shots this way. You get faster as you go. You can do whole scenes quite quickly, at least setting them up. But rendering you can't speed up unless you've got a faster processor. So I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah, hope you enjoyed that.